Hello and welcome everybody to InspireTalk Radio. We are very, very excited and honoured to have the fabulous Janine Allis with us today. Janine is an extraordinary person, entrepreneur, innovator. She's the founder of Boost Juice. She's the founder of Retail Zoo. She's the presenter and judge on Shark Tank. She's the author of the Accidental Entrepreneur and the mother of 4 wonderful children and many, many other things. So we're so grateful to have you here, Janine, with us. Thank you so much.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So what I'm going to do first of all is hand us over to Federico Ree, our co-host. He's going to tell us a little bit about what InspireTalk is, and then we will jump in and have a fantastic chat with you, Janine.
Perfect. Done.
I can't express how excited I am to be here today speaking to the Janine Allis, and I've got lots of questions to ask Janine. Now, just for the viewers, so that everyone knows what InspireTalk is in a nutshell, it is an online radio show broadcasted all around the world on Google Hangout. Our aim is to educate, inspire, and also empower the business entrepreneurial community, and hopefully give them some golden nuggets, something to take away to help them realise their goals, ambitions within their careers. So without saying too much more, perhaps I might shoot across the very first question to Janine, which I've been hanging out to ask for quite a while. Janine, firstly, thank you for joining us. And my question really pivots around your vision and going back to the very early years of your business venture and the early years of your startup, and perhaps even going back further into your childhood. I'm really keen to understand whether or not in the early years you actually wanted to be a serial entrepreneur, and perhaps in the retail sector.
No, not at all. No, I certainly wasn't one of those people that wanted to sell lemonade at a lemonade stand or even think about a business. I mean, probably to give you a bit of a context, I was brought up in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne in pretty lower to middle Australia, and no one in my school went to university. That's just not what you did. The school went to year 11. The school was a tech school, which was designed to create trades. So people basically left school at 16 and started in the workforce. That's what you did. And so there wasn't even any consideration of anything beyond that. So I didn't know anyone who owned a business. Actually, no, I knew one person whose father was a butcher. That was the closest we could get to any sort of business. And so there was no budding sort of, what do I want to do? I want to sort of grow my own business. I actually did want to go. I did want to adventure though. So I basically worked 4 or 5 jobs to save enough money to travel around the world, which I did. So I left when I was 21, and I told my poor mother that I was going to go for 3 months, and I came back 7 years later with a 2-year-old. So it was certainly an absolute blast and a journey. It was fantastic. I did it, but it was actually probably when I came back as a single mum with 0 money in my pocket, in actual fact, -0, and had debt, that I started working again and started forging a career. And it was actually on the birth of my 3rd child that I actually really did not want to work for someone again, and really that was probably when it was into my 30s, early 30s, I think it was 32. That I wanted my own business.
Look, you've certainly had an extraordinary career, without a doubt. And I guess my question still around vision is, how important is vision for any aspiring entrepreneur, for that matter, in order to achieve that ultimate success that you've accomplished in your career?
Look, vision's really important, but vision's not something complicated. So, for us, the vision was to create at the time there was nothing out there that had anything healthy. So, for me, it was, as a consumer, I wanted something that I could go out and actually get something genuinely healthy that tasted great. So the vision was to really create something that people on the run could actually be healthy. And even today, which I think is even more so, where the rates of obesity have never been higher, our vision is to try and make being healthy easy. But also not shove down people's throat kale, because people actually love the taste of fruit and vegetables, and we've got these great concoctions that taste great. So that was, and also choice. I mean, like my mother, who is 80, has very different dietary needs than my 17-year-old son, who trains every night at sport. So, and so what we do at Boost is it's really that variety, and that was my vision to have. I really hate people telling me what I can and can't do, and so I don't believe we should tell people that they have to eat a certain way. But I think it's important to have choice. So with choice and information, and so that was the vision, to have choice and information. Then we went down to even simpler. We then looked at what we really stood for. And, I've really got that spirit for living life and loving life. And so that's why on the back of every single T-shirt in our network is the word love life. And so once you actually start with that word love life, everything else comes to that. So, for example, look at the stores. Now, you wouldn't have a black store if you wanted something that had love life connected to it. What you wanted was lots of colour, smiley faces, you want great affirmation words, that's loving life. If you want love life, you don't have sour staff members not having fun. So who do we hire? And so everything we do, even in the business, it's about loving life. And look, in this office, we don't have a dress code, but we may look like a casual office, but we're a high performance business.
Sure.
So, and that's the other thing that I wanted. I wanted to surround myself. My vision was to surround myself with people smarter than myself, and the people that wanted to come on this journey with me.
Sure. So what I'm hearing is the formula to success really is a multitude of many components, and for you, it really stems around having something that's innovative, working with the right people, et cetera, et cetera. So thanks for that bit of input there, Janine. I'll probably give Laura an opportunity to ask her first question. So Laura, want to?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Janine. That's so insightful. And actually, I'd love to know, because I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there who are one-man bands and really wanting to grow, but not really sure how to do that or when to do that. So I'd love to know about, how did you go from the kitchen table to, going into a franchise to the global business that you are now? How did you know when to do that? And then how did you do it?
To be honest, I didn't know. And I think, if you want a resume of my jobs before this, I was a nanny in France, I was a stewardess on a yacht, I was a cinema manager in Singapore. There was nowhere on my resume that it says that I'm a business person, so I had no idea. But the reality is, in actual fact, that was probably my greatest strength. And the reason being is that I then, by having no idea, I didn't have any barriers. So I didn't really have a limit of what I could achieve or what I couldn't do. It was just, I just had to get it done and make it happen. So naivety played an enormous part, because I think that, in actual fact, I started the business after my third child to have a bit more balance so I could actually spend more time with my kids. And actually, the fact that this entrepreneurial spirit sort of was unlocked, and I never looked back. And certainly the thought of working part-time for 30 hours a week while I raised 3 young children under 5 certainly got blown out to working 120 hours a week and seeing my children rarely. That's the reality. And that's the reality. If people sort of think that they get into business and they immediately want to take a salary and then they're fooling themselves. Don't do business. I would never invest in someone who's not prepared to give it all. We had to sell our family home. We had to, I spent 3 months a year away to build the business. There was a lot, we worked ridiculous hours. There was, I didn't take a salary for 3 years, and we took not a cent out of the business for 5. Now that's the reality of growing a successful business. It's not about, calling yourself a founder or a entrepreneur and having a fast car. It's actually about moving back with your parents. It's very unfair. But it's it's whatever it takes. There's no one on this planet that has achieved great things that hasn't actually gone through sacrifice. Whether it's climbing, a big mountain where it's tough and you get to the top, it hurts to get there. The Olympians, they don't go out when they're training, they have to get up at 5 a.m. They have to do a special diet. People have to sacrifice to achieve great things. And I think that most people aren't prepared to do that. And I think that that's quite kind of where you need to look, is really look within to see if you're prepared for the journey. And to be honest, sometimes it's easier to work for someone, go home, not worry about it, you know, have a salary that's going to come out. You're not going to lose your family home.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love your honesty, because that is the reality of it. It's not, you know, oh, I'm just going to start my business and then in 6 months it's going to be thriving, and, you know, it's just not like that. But once you do find that formula when you are growing, and I'd love to hear this from you, is how do you keep the consistency and the standards? So before, you were talking about your staff and making sure that, you know, everything there is in place. How do you keep that as you grow bigger and bigger and bigger?
Yeah, look, it is you know, technology helps enormously. You know, in the early days, there was no way of checking whether a store trained their staff or not. You know, these days we can actually see on every store in Australia around the world how many staff have actually read the training, are aware of the marketing. So technology really helps. But really, it's really kind of common sense, because I remember sitting there actually as we were growing, going that same question: how do we have this vision of love life, we have this vision of generosity, we have this vision of doing retail different. How do I instill that in all the stores? And I thought, well, what if I put a sign up and tell the customers and reminded the people in store that that's what you have to do? So every single store, even today, has this sign that says guarantee, and it says, you know, paraphrasing, you come to Boost and you'll get a great tasting product that is made fresh with smiling people, and if we haven't created that for you, let us know and we'll fix it. And so it was really one of those things that it was something that, one, if the you know, person in store, you know, wasn't sure that they could be generous and do whatever it takes, at least there was something in store. So it was started with that simplicity. Then it's obviously a lot more complicated with regard to technology and utilising technology to monitor that the vision that we have is instilled in the store. We don't always get it right, but we find it pretty quick when we get it wrong and we fix it.
Yeah, I love that as well, because it's, you know, there are going to be those times where things go wrong, and it's just about, you know, it's just about going, okay, like Fed dropping out, but yeah, and then go, okay, so what can we do to fix this? Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to pass you back over to Fed, because I know he's got a couple more questions for you. Thanks, Janine.
Perfect timing, Janine and Laura. With things going wrong, I've just experienced that with technology right as we speak. Now, with every success story, Janine, obviously there's the other side to the coin, and you've mentioned sacrifice. I also want to introduce the words failures and setbacks and all those obstacles that you would overcome. What was your experience in the early years with regards to those struggles and challenges that you faced in trying to get sort of that rocket off the ground?
Look, I think that all those words that you used, I think that there's some summed up in learning. You know, I didn't kick myself very hard when I made a mistake for the first time, but if I continue to make those mistakes, then I was a fool. So I made sure that, you know, along the journey, you're learning every day, and every time you make a mistake, it costs money. And so I was constantly creating spreadsheets or creating systems to fill those holes when those holes appeared. Now, I get asked, you know, sometimes about, can you list all of the things that went wrong? Well, there's a million things that went wrong, but I have to say, though, without all of those things that went wrong, it wouldn't be the business I am today. So there is not one thing I would change out of all of those things that went wrong along the journey, because we wouldn't have the systems and processes and care factor, and wouldn't have the culture that we've got. And you know what? In actual fact, you have to make mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough. If you're not making mistakes, your business won't grow. You have to take risks. In actual fact, the biggest risk you can take is actually not doing anything. You know, businesses are an organic beast. They are always moving in a direction. If they're either moving forward or they're moving backwards. In actual fact, if they're staying the same, they're moving backwards. So it's important that you are constantly pushing. And you know, but to grow, you've got to take risks. And you know, sometimes that's quite scary, particularly when you know that, the cash flow is not there, and you know that, it may fail, but you've got to continue to sort of, take those risks to get to that next level.
It's interesting that you say that, and obviously hearing it from you is comforting, as far as, what I even go through as a business owner, as an entrepreneur myself, and surely all those other people out there in business as entrepreneurs who experience the day-to-day setbacks. It's good news to hear that you have to fail to succeed, and that's part of your learning process. So in terms of tolerating those failures and those setbacks, Janine, what is the mindset ultimately that you need to have, and perhaps come back to you with regards to what gave you that tenacity and that strength to overcome those first few 5 years?
I think it's a massive learning curve. I went from pretty much never have employed anyone, never really led anyone, to suddenly, having this beast that that was growing, went from 0 to 100 stores in 4 years. And you've got to remember, in those 4 years, you don't have the staff behind you to sort of help you grow that thing. Pretty much, you are the accountant, you are the person that paints the walls, you are everything. So, it was a massive learning curve for me personally, and also to come from the person that does everything to the person who leads. And so, there's very few business owners or founders or entrepreneurs, in that fact, that can actually start a small business and grow it to a big business, because you're a different type of person that can run a big business than it is a small business. So you have to change along the way. You have to use the mirror a lot to actually adjust to be able to be that founder. I think a great Australian example of that is Graham Turner from Flight Centre, who literally started his business from a dot and has done an amazing job to be the billion-dollar business it is today.
So what would be your top skill with regards to tolerating pain and failure? Is there one that comes to mind first?
Accountability is the biggest thing, I would say. I think that what people tend to do, particularly in the early years, is when things go wrong, the first thing people do is blame someone else. Same with your life, same with everything. If it's everyone else's fault, then you don't need to do anything about it. If you actually if you make everything your fault, then immediately you've got the power to change. Immediately you've got the power to fix it, and then immediately you've got the power to learn. As soon as it is not your fault, then it's all over. Because you just, if I turn around and say, oh gee, our sales are down this week, it was the government, it was petrol prices, it was wet weather, well then you go, oh, well, it's not our fault, so might as well sit there and wait for something else externally to change. So then my business will change. So, and people tend to do that a lot in business and in life, actually. So I'm a firm believer in looking within and where the answer is. And even my leaders, I don't respect a leader that blames elsewhere. I don't respect actually many people who blame the world. I respect people that really look within themselves. Like, for example, recently this girl put her hand up and said, I have a question. I said, oh, what's that? She said, how do you motivate your staff? And I said, well, I hire motivated staff. People are accountable for the fun they have in the office. We don't stop it. People are accountable for the joy they have. So it's important to get the right type in the business. It's something that I use by and live by, and it's you can either choose to soar or you choose to be a verb. And if you choose to be a verb, and we can all be verbs. I can certainly be a verb as well. It is a victim. For someone who's entitled, that person that goes, I've been in the business for 10 years, I'm entitled to that promotion. Someone who needs to be rescued, and people who blame. The reverse is actually where the power lays, and not only in the type of the way you think, but it's also in the way you communicate externally, and this positivity will come back to it. It's called SOAR. I call it SOAR. And it's solutions. I'm a solutions person. I take ownership for everything I do. I take accountability for everything I do, and I'm responsible for the outcome. And you start to communicate that way. So, for example, right, someone has sent you an email or done something, and you're cracked it, right? You're really pissed off. The first response could be a very verb response. You send it out and you say, it's your fault, and I'm entitled to better service, and I'm da-da-da-da-da, right? And so consequently you'll get a verb response back, right? Defensive. But if you stop and before you send it, delete it, and then approach it in solutions, accountability, responsibility, and in the SOAR way, then you'll find the response will be more solutions orientated, and the outcome will be the best outcome.
That's fantastic advice, Janine, and it's an excellent insight. And I guess being accountable means having control over the matter and doing something about it rather than expecting someone else to necessarily fix it. You're in charge, especially if you're a leader. Now, we do have a number of questions coming in from the public, and perhaps I might give Laura an opportunity to send you the first question, Janine. Laura, on to you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Janine, for sharing all of that. So interesting. So I've got a question from Sarah McKay in Sydney, and she's asked, she says that her biggest fear is being seen. And so I'm a public speaking coach, so I've worked with Sarah, and one of her things is about how can she put herself on camera and on video and stop herself from feeling so vulnerable and dealing with the tall poppy syndrome. She would like to know, do you have any advice for her?
Look, it's an interesting one, because that's something that's quite deep within us. You know, I do some public speaking, and whether I'm speaking in front of one person or 100 people, I get incredibly nervous. I think that quite often, though, when people get that nervous, they tend to try and be someone else. So that what they'll do is they'll go, everyone will think I'm this person. So that's some part of that fear is, or I'm going to get up there and they're going to think I'm stupid, or I'm going to stutter with words or whatever. I always find the best where I got to end up being quite a decent speaker was I just owned it. You know, I owned my mistakes. I owned the fact that I make up words. And you know what? I went on there and I was just me. And I think that love yourself and just be happy that the people have asked you to talk or get on a stage or whatever it is, they've asked you to be there. So if they've asked you to be there, they've asked you for a reason. They want to see you and they want to know you. So I think the first thing I would say to Sarah is be comfortable with her. And you know what? If you stuff it up, it's funny. You know, don't take yourself so seriously. Everyone stuffs it up. You know, everyone does. I went on stage once, and my daughter ran on stage when she was 2 years old and lifted my skirt up. You know, and you know, it wasn't pretty. You know, so just own it. You know, and people are, everyone's faulty. Everyone is, and people want to see that other people are too. So you know, I think in some respects, you know, just being happy with who you are and go up there and be what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great advice, and owning that mistake, because people don't want to see perfection, because none of us are. And yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. Thank you.
Now I have a question from Alicia from all the way from sunny New Zealand. Oh, I probably shouldn't say sunny, but her question is, with such a busy schedule, how do you actually, what's your productivity secret?
My productivity, I'm a believer in there's no such thing as life balance, or there is, but it comes in clumps. So I firmly believe, you know, 20 to 30 is the time in your life where you're discovering who you are and having fun, and it's sort of very carefree. 30 to 40 is where you're climbing your Everest. You know, it's a time when, you know, there for me, there was no life balance. Actually, at one point, I was thinking, God, I'm not spending any time with the family. And I ended up reading the whole Harry Potter series to my boys just so I could, you know, spend time with them. So, yeah, 30 to 40 is normally that climbing the Everest. 40 to 50 is you should be more on the rudder than the you know, on the oars. So, yeah, going back to the question, how do I manage it? I now am in a great position that I have a business, that I have some fantastic people around me. If you've got a business, your biggest job to give you productivity and give you a life is to do yourself out of a job. You know, hire great people that can actually push you out of the seat so you can actually have a life. You can go on holidays and not think that the business is going to fall apart. I do my own hours, so I will work till 12 o'clock in the morning if I want to. You know, I make sure that I don't have any appointments before 11 o'clock, and I make sure I do yoga every morning. I try and have, you know, Mondays off. So so basically what I'm saying is use your diary to control your life. You know, in every single January, I look at the year and I go, where are my spikes? What am I looking forward to? So in January, I'll plan a yoga retreat somewhere. I'll plan a whole family holiday, and I'll actually scatter them through the year in January while I'm still sort of starting the year. So I know I have my spikes. So what I'm saying, I suppose the answer is plan it. You know, your diary is your guide, and you know, make sure you ensure you have great spikes in your year. Because if not, another year goes by, and all you've done is nothing.
So hearing you speak, and with my own experience, really, it's about hiring people to make yourself redundant. Is that right? Absolutely.
You know, and in actual fact, the people under you should be doing that too, and that is how your business grows.
Cool. Fantastic advice, Janine. We've probably got room for one more question from our viewers. And Laura, do you have one?
Yes, I do. I've got one from Jess, and she says, how do you stay on track? And I guess it kind of links with what you've just mentioned, but how do you stay on track when you're also a mum? And I know your children are a little bit older now, but how did you juggle that in the beginning with being a mum to 4 children and growing your business at the same time?
Yeah, I think, you know, set yourself up to succeed is one of them. So I made sure that when I had my office, it was, you know, the first 2 years I actually worked from home, so I could sort of, when they came home, I had great support. My mum was fantastic. My mum came to my house every day to help, which was, you know, I've only got one mum. I didn't know she was so special. Apparently she's very special. And so, you know, location. So when I actually did move into an office, it was within 3 kilometres of my home. And their school was within 3 kilometres. So, and then running my diary. So I made sure that, you know, I followed if there was a sporting event, if there was anything at school, then I made sure I was there for them. But I also never, I got rid of the guilt. I never was guilty about not getting involved in school. You know, I never do canteen duty. I never did anything with my kids. In actual fact, with the school, you know, but I was there for the children. So, you know, I was there for the Christmas pageants, no matter how painful they were, I was there. So again, it's about running your diary, you know. But you know what? I was absolutely the woman that they hung out with to feel good about their parenting. You know, I was the one that the kids went to school in the wrong uniform. I was the one that I took my kids to school and there was no school, you know. Yeah, so with balancing everything, you know, sometimes things fall through the crack, you know, but you know what? I always believe that women get so caught up in this guilt business that I honestly believe that I'm a better mother because I'm a happier woman. I'm a happier woman because I do what I love. And so I don't feel guilty about that. And I also think the kids they've had a really interesting journey and been all over the world, and you know, my office has always had a toy box in there, and I do have still a little girl. You know, I have older kids, but I've got a little 8-year-old. And you know, I haven't seen my business and personal life separate. It's all evolved. You know, our conferences that we have every year, my kids come. You know, my kids are as comfortable in my office as they are at home. So, you know, I think as much as you can, you integrate. There is no work and family. It's all integrated. And sometimes that works, and sometimes it's a horrible mess. But you work it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree with you there. There's no separation. Life is life, and it all comes together. I don't have children yet, but I've got all of that to come. So yeah, I think just go with the flow and deal with what comes up and do your best.
And don't be guilty. You know, don't be guilty about the life you lead and the choices you make. You know, kids are robust. You know, they're not. You don't put them in cotton wool, and you know they need to have some independence. And you know, yes, I was very lucky to have my mum, and still are lucky to have my mum to give me the help I need. But you know, sometimes, you know, life's a pendulum, and sometimes you get it wrong, and sometimes it's all out of control and things fall through cracks, and other times it's fine. But you know, that's what makes life exciting.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Laura. Look, one thing that strikes me about you, Janine, is your humility. In fact, I remember meeting you many years ago in 2004. Obviously, you probably don't know who I was back then, but what struck me about your public presentation was your humility and how down to earth you were back then and still are today. And I guess for the viewers, based on what you've said today, I've got a number of golden nuggets here. We call them golden nuggets because I believe that they are valuable tokens for our viewers to take away and to help them maybe build their own careers or businesses. So some of my favorites that I've basically circled here a few times include having an entrepreneurial spirit. It's pretty much the fuel to your car. Sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. Accountability. Use your diary effectively and plan, and again, being humble. And I think humility goes a long way in this world of business, but also being decisive and confident. So I've got one last question to ask you, Janine, and it really comes down to establishing your brand online. And obviously you've got a deep knowledge of that. What advice would you give aspiring entrepreneurs, those that are wanting to establish their product or their service or their own personal identity online?
Yeah, look, it's a moving target, and so whatever advice I give this minute, it's probably changed within the next minute. So, for example, Facebook was for many people a great way to get traction. Now you're lucky to get 2%. You're lucky to reach 2% of your total audience in Facebook now, without paying an absolute fortune. Which, good on them for finding the financial model. But it makes it very difficult for people who are building their business using Facebook. And the reality is, Instagram and all of those will follow suit, because at the end of the day, they're also a business. They're not a charity organisation. I think the key thing with online is be interesting, and the best way to get traction is to do it organically. And so you have to not, if you start to preach to people, then people will switch off. If they feel like it's some sort of community and you're giving them valuable information, then they'll switch on. So don't sell people anything. If they, there's enough ads that pop up and you won't get any followers. Be funny, be real. I think online is a minefield, but when you get it right, the amount of exposure you can get and the speed of exposure can be extraordinary. But unfortunately, it's such a crowded marketplace now that you kind of need mainstream media like a radio or a TV to actually drive people through the website or through some of these social channels. But you've got the organic if you want to get onto Twitter's for people, Facebook's for businesses. Snapchat is getting a place. Instagram is for more, things like homing or interior decorating type things. So understand each medium and understand where your business fits within that medium as well. It's a difficult one, and you just blink and there's another strategy coming up. People sometimes thought that Pokemon has been a massive hit, even though it's come off its edge. It's still the biggest game in the history of games. And how does my business can tie into that? Can I drop a lure? Can I how do I do that? So it's just having that curious mind. It's going to places like South by Southwest in America to find out what the latest and greatest things happening and be ahead of everyone else. It's tough, but then again, business is tough, and it's the matter of going, try that, didn't work, adjust, try that. It's like business is like a boat in the water, a sailing boat in the water. You're trying to find the wind. So you're constantly tacking to find the wind. When you find the wind, then you go for it full steam ahead. But you've still got to keep tacking until you find that wind.
Great advice. It's like getting traction on your wheels in your car. And I guess just to mirror what you've said, in my own understanding, it's about providing value to the community, and it's also being prepared to disrupt or innovate your industry sector. So excellent advice. Janine, we'll probably wrap up in just a few minutes, and I'll give Laura a chance to maybe fire one last question, and then we'll end the program shortly.
Okay, one last question. 1 second, I have another question. How do you overcome the fear when you have lost a business already due to a bad decision or a bad partnership?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question, because once you get burned, you don't go back to the fire, do you? I think if you pick up any book or bio from someone successful, you'll find that they failed many times. Often we look at, whether it's Steve Jobs or, Boost Juice or McDonald's or whatever, you think, oh God, that was probably just, they started and it just went straight. It was always great. Never is. Yeah. And people fail. I think the biggest shame is that when you do fail in businesses, you learn many, many lessons of what not to do it again. And often it is about partnership. So, you know, you take those, and what the shame again is, people never go into another business after it, because the lessons you've learned in that business, you can take into the next business and do it better and bigger. And also with that knowledge, hopefully it will be with less risk. So, you know, you have, in life, you have to be courageous and you have to have courage. And, you know, sometimes you need to just get back on that horse, you know, because if you don't, you never will. So think that, you know, if that's what you want to do and that's what's in you, just because the first one failed doesn't mean the second one won't.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's it. You've got two choices. You get back on the horse, or you don't. Take the lessons, or you don't.
You know, as far as we know, unless there's evidence to the contrary, we get one life. You know, and you know, when you get to your deathbed, you don't want to be talking about regrets. And so, you know, I think sometimes, you know, people use, you know, back to the verbs, all the reasons in the world why things can't happen. I think, you know, there's lots of reasons why it can. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Janine. That was absolutely wonderful. So many golden nuggets in there for our listeners. And I know that a lot of them will be listening back again and again to that. So we're so grateful for you being here, and thank you for your time. I'll just pop over to Fed to wrap up, and we'll hope to see you again in the future, Janine. Thank you.
No worries, my pleasure.
So just for the viewers, our next exciting speaker is Christina Carlson from Kiki K. We will have her on our program on the 20th of September at 8 p.m. So hopefully you can tune in then. But Janine, back to you. I cannot express enough gratitude for your time and your wisdom for our viewers and for ourselves. So a big thank you to you, and hopefully we'll be in touch in the future. So thanks again.
No worries at all. Thanks a lot. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.